Imagine walking into an elegant store, determined to find a special piece for an important occasion. You're wearing a beautiful dress and, for a brief moment, you feel confident and renewed. But suddenly, everything changes. A store attendant approaches with a suspicious look, and without any reason, she begins insinuating that you are trying to steal. Your attempt to stay calm only seems to fuel her suspicions, until, in a fit of rage, she grabs and tears the dress you're wearing. Humiliated and hurt by the prejudice, you decide to reveal a detail she could never have imagined: you're an FBI agent. Want to know how this story ends? Then subscribe, like, and leave a comment telling us what you think. I just wanted a quiet day for myself. After weeks of intense work at the FBI, investigating complex cases and dealing with a never-ending pile of reports, I felt I deserved a moment of lightness. Today, no disguises, no codes, no watchful eyes around me, or at least, that's what I hoped for. Just me, Dana Lewis, a dedicated mother, out to find something special for my daughter's birthday. The idea was simple: I wanted a beautiful dress. Something that would go well with the special dinner I had planned but could also be a gift for myself. When I entered the boutique, the sense of calm quickly faded. The atmosphere was elegant, filled with designer clothes hanging on polished metal hangers, strategically placed lights to highlight the pieces, but the air was heavy. Those looks, I knew them well. Working at the FBI, you develop a special kind of radar for reading environments and people. The closed-off expressions and the way some of the staff looked at me as I walked in didn't go unnoticed. It was as if my presence there was out of place for them. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was there for a simple reason, and nothing would take my focus off it. I deserved this, and so did my daughter. The store assistant approached, not in a hurry. She was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, with her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun and flawless makeup. She didn't seem happy to see me, although I was sure she had no idea who I was, or what I did. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, with a forced smile. There was something in her tone that made me feel a slight discomfort, but I decided to ignore it. I was there for a reason and didn't have time to be bothered by small details. I smiled back, keeping the tone polite. "Yes, I'm looking for a dress for a special occasion. Something classic, elegant, maybe in more neutral tones," I explained. She nodded but didn't make any move to guide me or show me any pieces. Instead, she just stood there, as if waiting for me to make the next move on my own. I decided to explore the store myself. I walked past the racks, observing the fabrics and details of the clothes. Every now and then, I could feel her gaze on me, analyzing every movement. I knew I was being watched, but I chose to focus on what I came for. I found a dress that seemed perfect. It was a simple design, but with impeccable tailoring. The fabric draped beautifully, and I could imagine my daughter smiling when she saw me in it. I picked up the dress and took a quick look in the mirror before turning to the assistant, who was still watching me with a blank expression. "I'll try this one on, okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She shrugged. "The fitting room is over there," she replied, pointing to the back of the store without even looking at me directly. I went to the fitting room, trying to keep calm. I put on the dress and looked at myself in the mirror. It fit perfectly, and for a moment, I felt renewed, almost forgetting the looks, the feeling of judgment. In that brief moment, it was just me and my reflection in the mirror, finally away from any other concerns. But as soon as I stepped out of the fitting room, the air seemed heavy again. She was there, waiting for me, arms crossed and an expression of disdain that she didn't bother to hide. "So, are you buying it or just trying it on to show off?" she suddenly blurted out, with no trace of subtlety. The question caught me off guard. There was a tone of sarcasm and contempt that I hadn't expected. I tried not to show the discomfort it caused me. I knew exactly what these subtle provocations were, and the more you react, the more control you give to the other person. I took a deep breath, staying calm and looking her straight in the eye. "I plan to buy it, yes." "What's the price?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She laughed, a dry and almost mocking laugh, before coming a little closer. "I don't know if you've noticed, but this is a high-end boutique," she said, sizing me up with her eyes. "We don't sell to just anyone, you know." The comment was a punch to the stomach. The kind of comment that reminded me of other similar situations, where someone assumed, based on my skin tone or the way I dressed, that I didn't belong in a place. It was a superficial judgment, an attitude from someone who seemed to take pleasure in belittling others. "Look, just tell me the price." "I'm a customer just like anyone else here," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She paused, observing me as if deciding what to do. I felt the heavy silence, almost as if every second was stretching the tension between us. Deep down, I just wanted to leave, but I knew I couldn't afford to back down or be intimidated. After all, I was there for a simple dress to celebrate with my daughter. The assistant shot me another look, this time with a glint of challenge in her eyes. "Fine. I'll get the price tag," she said, spinning on her heels and disappearing between the shelves. I took a deep breath, trying to stay focused. I was there for a personal reason, and none of this should matter. When my eyes landed on that dress, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a lightness, almost as if I had returned to those simple adolescent dreams about what to wear to a special event. It was an elegant dress, a deep blue color, with impeccable tailoring in seams that highlighted every detail. I picked it up carefully, appreciating the soft texture of the fabric under my fingers. This piece was everything I needed at that moment. I closed my eyes for a moment, imagining myself wearing it at the dinner with my daughter, seeing her smile when she saw me dressed like that, maybe a little different from what she was used to seeing in my everyday life. I decided to try the dress on. For a second, I forgot about Emily, the heavy atmosphere, and the judging looks. I took a deep breath, steady, and made my way to the fitting room. As I passed by her, I noticed that her gaze seemed to follow me, fixed, evaluating every detail of me. It wasn't the kind of look that offered assistance or kindness. No. It was the kind of look that questioned, doubted, and carried with it a judgment that wasn't even trying to be disguised. But, you know, at that moment, I decided that nothing, not that look, not that attitude, was going to ruin my day. Today, nothing and no one is going to ruin my day, I thought, forcing a small smile as I locked myself in the fitting room. The silence inside was almost comforting. There was no background noise, only the sound of my own breathing as I slid the dress over my body. I looked at myself in the mirror, and there I was, completely different from what I was used to seeing in my daily life at work. The dress fit like a glove, accentuating my curves in an elegant way, without exaggeration, and brought a sense of freshness and beauty that I hadn't allowed myself to feel in some time. For a moment, Dana the FBI agent disappeared, and there was only Dana the woman, the mother, who had plans to make her daughter happy with a special evening. As I adjusted the dress and fixed my hair, I heard rustling from outside. It was as if someone was moving nervously, almost restlessly. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my reflection and that small moment of peace I wanted to last forever. But the tension in the air seemed to only grow. I heard footsteps approaching, stopping just outside the fitting room. "Are you done?" Emily's voice came from the other side of the door, sharp and impatient. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. With the dress still adjusted to my body, I opened the fitting room door, a slight smile on my face, but standing firm. After all, I had the right to be there, to try it on, and to decide calmly whether I was going to buy the dress or not. "Yes, I'm almost done. I just wanted one last look," I replied, trying to mask the discomfort. Emily looked me up and down, her face twisted in a mix of disdain and something that looked like anger. It threw me off. I felt as if I had invaded her territory, as if my presence there was an affront. But I remained silent, not giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. When I looked away to the mirror, I saw that she was still staring at me, which only heightened my discomfort. "You know this dress is pretty expensive, right?" she finally said, her tone acidic. I swallowed hard but kept my composure. I knew she was trying to intimidate me, perhaps hoping I would just give up and leave. But at that moment, something inside me decided I wasn't going to give in. I had faced much worse situations in my work, and nothing told me I should tolerate this kind of treatment during a moment that was supposed to be light and relaxing. "Yes, I know," I replied firmly. "I just need a moment to decide." I realized that my response irritated her even more. Emily took a deep breath, visibly uncomfortable, but not hiding her expression of disgust. I was ready to end the situation, take off the dress, go back to my role as a customer, and proceed with my purchase when, suddenly, she took a step forward and, before I could react, reached out and grabbed the side of the dress forcefully. "You know what? I don't think you should even be touching this piece," she said, pulling the fabric with unexpected strength. I felt the tear before I heard the sound. The dress ripped at the side seam, a muffled, sharp noise that echoed in the silence of the fitting room. I looked at her, stunned, as I processed what had just happened. Emily let go of the dress, a half-smile of satisfaction on her face, as if she had finally done what she had wanted from the start. The shock quickly gave way to a wave of indignation. I couldn't believe she had actually done that, not only interrupted my moment, but literally destroyed what I was about to buy. I looked down, observing the tear that now hung at the side of the dress, like a brutal reminder of the disdain she felt for me. "You shouldn't even be here, you know," Emily continued, her voice now dripping with contempt. "People like you, this is not the right place." I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fury rising within me. I wanted to shout, I wanted to react, but I knew that causing a scene there would only give me more problems. My agent instincts told me to stay calm, not to react impulsively. But this wasn't an operation, this was my life, my right to be respected like anyone else. As I tried to regain my composure, I heard muffled laughter coming from one of the other employees at the counter, as if everyone there shared the same contempt that Emily was showing. The tension in the air was palpable. I knew that if I let this pass, I would leave there feeling defeated. "I'm paying for the dress, torn or not," I replied, trying to regain control of the situation. "But I won't tolerate this kind of behavior." I could feel the adrenaline running through my body, and my desire to confront Emily only grew. I held the hem of the dress, feeling the torn fabric against my skin, a physical reminder of her disrespect. But I knew I needed to stay calm. A direct confrontation might only make the situation worse, and, in my role as an agent, I had the skill and patience to deal with people like her, and, above all, to act intelligently. I looked deeply into Emily's eyes, trying to show her that I wouldn't be intimidated so easily. "Then, can I pay for it?" I asked, with a calm but firm tone. Emily hesitated, but the satisfied smile on her face quickly turned into discomfort. I could see that she wasn't used to such a response. She had expected me to lower my head and leave there defeated, but I stood firm. "Oh, of course, if that's what you want," she said, finally breaking the silence, but without hiding the contempt in her voice. As I got dressed in my own clothes in the fitting room, I thought about the countless times I had dealt with tense situations at work. I was used to keeping a cool head, but this was different. I wasn't on a mission, I wasn't in an interrogation. I was just trying to make a purchase, and suddenly I found myself exposed to pure and simple discrimination. When I left the fitting room, carefully holding the torn dress, I felt all the eyes in the store on me, but instead of feeling intimidated, it only strengthened my determination. Emily was waiting near the counter, impatient, tapping her fingers as she watched me. I walked up to her, handing her the dress carefully, as if I still had some respect for the piece, even if she had none for me. "Here you go," I said, keeping my tone calm. "I'll pay for it, but this isn't over." Emily's expression shifted between surprise and subtle apprehension. She clearly wasn't used to being confronted. The other employees seemed more cautious, perhaps realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control. Emily typed the price into the register, and the amount appeared on the screen, even more outrageous now considering the condition of the dress. I took out my wallet, pulled out my card, and slid it through the machine, not breaking eye contact with her. Deep down, she was already flustered, but she still tried to maintain her air of superiority. "I hope you find something more suitable next time," she commented with a fake smile, handing me the bag with the dress. I held the bag and, instead of leaving immediately, I decided it was the right moment to give her one final response, one she would never forget. "You know, I tried to ignore your lack of professionalism," I began, my voice low but firm. "But I think you really have no idea who you're dealing with. Maybe I should explain." She laughed, but the laugh was short and forced. I could see the doubt in her eyes, but she kept her posture, crossing her arms. "Oh, and who are you, really? Some important person?" The store was silent, and all the employees were watching closely. I could feel the curiosity and nervousness in the air. I took a deep breath, and then, with a tone that left no room for doubt, I replied. "Special Agent of the FBI, Internal Investigations Division. And believe me, I'll have a lot to report about the inappropriate behavior of employees in commercial establishments." Emily's face paled instantly. She began to open her mouth to defend herself, but the words seemed stuck. The other employees exchanged looks, clearly surprised and uncomfortable. There it was, the truth, and the shock on her face was a clear sign that the situation hadn't gone the way she expected. "And now, I hope you've learned something about respect," I added, keeping my gaze fixed on her. "I'm walking out that door with my head held high, because that's what I do. But I'm sure the memory of what you did today will stay with you for a long time." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked toward the door. Firm steps, my heart pounding in my chest. As I crossed the door, I realized I had gained something more than a torn dress. I had gained my peace, my dignity, and, above all, a reminder to myself that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to make us feel less than we are. And, in that moment, as I left that store, I felt it wasn't just an act of resistance. It was an act of power. As soon as I left the store, a mixture of relief and anger still bubbled inside me. The dress was ruined, but what hurt more was the memory of how I had been treated. I knew I needed to do something. Not just for myself, but for all the people who, like me, had faced judgmental stares and prejudiced attitudes in moments when they just wanted to live their lives in peace. I got into the car and sat there for a moment, quietly absorbing the scene I had just experienced. The urge to expose that experience was overwhelming, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I grabbed my phone and called the FBI office, not as an agent on duty, but as a citizen seeking justice. After a few rings, the familiar voice of my supervisor, Karen, answered. Karen was a strong and decisive woman, with years of experience and always ready to support her team. "Dana? Are you okay?" she asked, sensing something different in my tone. "Actually, not really, Karen. I need a few minutes to explain something that just happened to me," I said, trying to keep my tone as professional as possible. She was silent as I recounted everything, from the moment I walked into the store to the instant I revealed my identity to the clerk. Karen listened carefully, absorbing every detail. "Dana, this is serious. Not just because of what you went through, but because of what it represents. I'll forward this to the Community Relations Department. They work closely with local businesses, and will make sure this behavior is investigated. No one should go through this, FBI agent or not. Thank you, Karen. I don't want any special treatment, just for situations like this to stop happening. It's a matter of respect and dignity," I said, feeling a wave of relief knowing my voice would be heard. "And it will be, Dana. I'll keep track of this closely, and you'll be kept informed every step of the way." I hung up the phone, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew the response wouldn't be instantaneous, but that call was the first step. More than a formal complaint, it represented a fight against a culture that, unfortunately, still exists in some places. As I drove back home, my mind turned to my daughter. I thought about the world I wanted to build for her, where she could walk with confidence and pride, never needing to question her worth because of the judgment of others. When I parked in front of my building, I felt lighter. I knew that day had been a turning point, not just for me, but for something much bigger. That night, as I looked at the torn dress, I realized it now held new meaning. It was no longer just a beautiful piece of clothing, it was a symbol of resistance, a reminder of the strength we all have to stand up against injustice, no matter how small it may seem. Before going to bed, I sent Karen a message, thanking her once again for her support. I received an immediate reply. "We'll take care of this, Dana. Everyone deserves respect." I smiled, feeling that, in some way, that day hadn't been in vain. And with that, I fell asleep with the feeling that I had planted a small seed of change, one that, perhaps, one day would grow into something bigger. Several days later, I received an email from the FBI's Community Relations team. They confirmed that the complaint had been officially registered and that the boutique would be investigated, with potential educational and legal measures to address the incident. It was a first step in ensuring that, in the future, no one else would have to go through what I did. That afternoon, I was at home with my daughter when I heard the phone ring. It was an unknown number, but something told me it was important. "Hello?" I answered, trying to maintain a formal tone. "Ms. Jones?" The voice on the other end sounded cautious, almost hesitant. "Yes, who's speaking?" "This is the manager of the boutique, Mr. Parker. I wanted to personally apologize for what happened in our store. I heard about the incident and I can assure you that we are taking steps to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. Emily has been suspended while we conduct an internal investigation, and all employees will undergo training on discrimination and customer service." There was something in Parker's tone that seemed sincere. I felt a small sense of relief, but also a push to use that moment to emphasize the importance of what was being done. "Mr. Parker, I appreciate you reaching out, but I hope you understand that this is not just about an apology. It's about years of accumulated experiences, and no one should be treated this way, especially because of stereotypes and prejudice," I said, with a firm voice. "I understand, Ms. Jones. And I assure you that we will do everything in our power to make our store a more inclusive and respectful environment. If you have any suggestions on how we can improve, I would be honored to hear them," he replied, showing a humility that surprised me. "I believe serious training is a good start, Mr. Parker. And I hope your staff understands that respect is not a formality, it's the foundation of good service." "You are absolutely right, Ms. Jones. And once again, I deeply regret that you went through this. We are committed to fixing what happened." I hung up the phone feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was satisfied with the manager's response. However, I knew that deep changes don't happen overnight. Still, the call gave me a sense of hope. Maybe that incident was the beginning of something bigger, a chance to transform that space into a truly welcoming environment for everyone. A few weeks later, I received an invitation from the boutique itself. They were organizing a reopening event after the restructuring period, and Parker insisted on inviting me as a sort of guest of honor. Part of me hesitated, wondering if it was just a symbolic gesture, an attempt to clean up the store's image. But I decided to accept the invitation. After all, my presence there represented something deeper than mere forgiveness. It represented the importance of standing firm against prejudice and the possibility of transformation. On the day of the event, I wore something simple, yet elegant. I didn't want to attract attention for my appearance, but for my presence and what it symbolized. As soon as I entered, I noticed a change in the atmosphere. There was a new service team, and Parker was at the entrance, greeting customers personally. He came up to me, a little nervous, but with a genuine smile. "Ms. Jones, thank you for coming. Your account made us rethink every aspect of our service. This is just the beginning of the change, and I hope we can live up to it," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I'm here to see exactly that, Mr. Parker," I replied with a slight smile. The store was full of customers, and I noticed that there was more diversity among the staff as well. It seemed that Parker was genuinely committed to making the environment more inclusive. As I walked through the store, a few customers recognized me, probably knowing about the incident from the manager's account. I felt that my presence there, though uncomfortable at times, was also a sign that real changes were being made. Before leaving, Parker came up to me one last time. "Thank you again for giving us this opportunity. This is more than just a reopening for us. It's a new beginning." "I hope so, Mr. Parker. May it be a beginning where respect and equality prevail," I replied, feeling that, in some way, that moment closed the cycle that had begun with that tense afternoon in the boutique. When I left the store, a cool breeze surrounded me, as if the very air around me was lighter. I knew my experience wouldn't change the world on its own, but perhaps I had planted a small seed of change. And with that, I moved forward, satisfied that I had used my voice, not only for my own benefit but for all those who deserve to be seen and respected. When I got home that night, I looked at my daughter, who was sitting on the couch, playing with her toys. She was completely unaware of what I had just experienced, and in a way, that gave me relief. She shouldn't have to carry the weight of the world. She was still too young to understand the complexities of a society that, too often, is still far from being just. But at the same time, I knew that my mission as a mother wasn't just to protect her from the world's pains, but also to prepare her to face them with courage and wisdom. That's why, in a way, the fight I went through in that store wasn't just mine. It was for her, for others, for all those who faced the weight of an unjust judgment. I sat next to her, kissed her on the forehead, and smiled. She looked up at me with her curious eyes, and something inside me lit up. I was stronger, firmer. It wasn't just about doing my job excellently or ensuring my daughter had everything she needed. Now, it was also about fighting for a world where empathy and respect prevailed, where anyone could walk into a store or walk down the street without worrying about looks or judgments. I knew this fight would be long, but I was willing to follow it to the end. A few weeks later, Karen called me to update me on the investigation's progress. The boutique had been officially sanctioned for discriminatory practices, and the employees had participated in workshops on diversity and inclusion. Emily, the attendant who had attacked me, had been fired, but the store was making clear efforts to correct its mistake. That was a victory, but a victory that would require ongoing vigilance. It wasn't just about offering an apology, but about changing a deep-rooted mentality that often hides beneath the surface. Karen thanked me again for my commitment and for taking the first step in reporting the incident. And although I knew the journey was far from over, I also knew that each small act of resistance could lead to something bigger. Something that, one day, could turn that kind of attitude into something unthinkable, into a past that future generations would look at with disbelief, like a distant story of a world that no longer exists. That night, before going to bed, I returned to my room and looked at the dress. The same dress Emily had torn. Now, it was in a box, carefully folded, as a memory, a symbol of the fight we wage. It wasn't just a piece of damaged fabric. It was the portrait of resistance. A woman who refused to be silenced, a mother who wasn't afraid to show the world the value of standing tall, even when the world tried to knock her down. I looked at the dress one last time, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because, in the end, maybe the greatest lesson of all was this: strength isn't just in physical struggle. It's in the courage to stand up, even when the world tries to knock you down. And that's how, little by little, we managed to transform our environment. One step at a time. And with that, I fell asleep peacefully, knowing that no matter what came tomorrow, I would have the strength needed to face it. Because now, the fight was mine, but it was also everyone's. And together, little by little, we were building a better world.